Yo, what up, brothers? What's up? It's the director. Chargers fans, good evening and salutations. We've got a good one for you guys today, revolving around our Rockstar halfback, Austin Ekeler. Ekeler has emerged as one of the best dual threat running backs in the entire NFL with his performance in the 2019 season last year. In this video, I'm going to share why I think Ekeler could become the next running back to eclipse 1,000 rushing and 1,000 receiving yards, etching his name as the 1K Rockstar. And before we get started with this video, guys, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this content. The small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get started with this video. Now, to accomplish 1,000 rushing and receiving is a big thing, dudes. Only 3 running backs in NFL history have accomplished this. Roger Craig of San Francisco in 1985, Marshall Faulk of the St. Louis Rams in 99, and Christian McCaffrey of the Carolina Panthers in 2019, just this last season. Here are the reasons why I think Ekeler could hit that mark. So to establish everything, here are the stats from Austin Ekeler last season. Rushing 132 attempts for 557 yards, 3 touchdowns on an average of 4.2 yards per carry. Receiving 92 receptions for 993 yards, 8 touchdowns with an average of 10.8 yards per reception. Now, honestly, you look at that and you think, okay, he could easily get 1,000 receiving yards based on that from last year. I mean, honestly, he was 7 yards away last season. But what about his rushing stats? 557 yards. He'd have to about double his yards from last season in order to hit 1,000 rushing. I think it's possible, dudes. Let's look at reason number 1. Melvin Gordon, our lead back for most of last season, is out. He's got better things to do out in Denver, apparently. This pushes our new halfback 1 into the limelight, Austin Ekeler. Now, Melvin Gordon did hold out last season, honestly hurting our team tremendously, but what did he post in the 12 games that he did play in? Melvin Gordon 2019 posted 162 attempts for 612 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 3.8 yards per carry. He did have some work in the receiving game too, 42 receptions for 269 yards and a touchdown with an average of 7 yards per reception. That's around 900 yards and 9 touchdowns. Those carries, those yards, those touchdowns need to go somewhere. And more than likely, they're going to be going to our new running back 1. Now, likely, he's not going to get 100% of those numbers. He's going to be sharing some of those with Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly. But I think the real thing I want to get across here is opportunity. Now, Austin Ekeler being our number 1 running back from week 1 is a pretty big deal. In 2019, Ekeler had 6 games with 5 or less carries. That's almost a third of the season, right? 18, yeah. In fact, his season average was about 8 carries per game, and I do expect this number to go up dramatically. And the Chargers run the ball a lot. Ekeler may not be viewed as a bell cow kind of running back, but he's still considered an every down back. He's going to be on the field a lot this season, guys, and I expect his rushing attempts to go up 4 to 6 carries per game. I think that's pretty reasonable. Another big thing that we did this offseason as well was solidifying the right side of our line. That's a strong sign that the Bolts are trying to improve their run game. The right side tends to be where your strongest run game comes from. The Chargers touting Mike Pouncey, Trey Turner, and Brian Bulaga. That's some serious talent on the side of the ball that you're going to be wanting to run behind. And Anthony Lynn knows this. He's an underrated coach when it comes to running the ball. Being an ex-running back in the NFL himself with the Denver Broncos, he's seen success everywhere he's been in the run game. So Ekeler has all the supporting cast in the world to improve his game from last season, not to mention the opportunity is huge, being given the reins as the number 1 running back of this team. Another big factor too is how much our offensive scheme has drastically changed. Tyrod Taylor and or Justin Herbert will be the starting quarterbacks of this team next year. And these QBs will see the most success with a run-first offensive mentality. Taylor's conservative, a game manager. Herbert is a rookie. He's a little bit green. This leads me to believe we're going to be running the ball quite a lot in order to establish a more flexible pacing on offense. Now, the biggest threats to be taking away carries from Ekeler are likely Justin Jackson and maybe even Tyrod Taylor himself. And I'd say Jackson is good. He's very good. But he'll remain in the same position as Ekeler last year as a running back too. Ekeler will remain firmly as our lead back. So for all these reasons, opportunity, supporting cast, a changing offense, and definitely leading the team in carries are reasons that I believe Austin Ekeler could improve his number to 1,000 yards. Now in the receiving game, again, this is where I remain more confident in Austin Ekeler's ability to put up 1,000. He already posted 993 yards last year, 7 shy of the goal that we're looking for. What's what's funny enough is that Christian McCaffrey posted only 8 more yards than Ekeler with 24 more receptions. McCaffrey was also a full-time starter for that team the entire year. So there is no doubt in my mind that Ekeler will eclipse 1,000 yards. He will be the best receiving halfback in the league next season. And just like in the running game, for the receiving game for Ekeler, a mobile quarterback is important. The Chargers want to implement a scheme that allows them to become more flexible in and out of the pocket. A mobile quarterback's best friend is their safety valves, halfbacks, and tight ends. This will likely cause defenses to bite down on a guy like Tyrod Taylor, allowing Ekeler space to get free. And nobody's more dangerous out in space than our boy Austin Ekeler. Another thing I noticed from last season was screens. We need more screens. Ekeler has special agility and burst that makes screens work. And the Chargers will likely utilize this more next season. There is no halfback more dangerous after the catch than Ekeler, and screens are definitely a good way to utilize that skill. And you also got to think about lining Ekeler up at wide receiver, dudes. He took plenty of snaps in the slot or even outside last season. And although a majority of his yards came after the catch, he did surprisingly catch several passes on the outside, some for touchdowns. So I do think it's a great possibility that Austin Ekeler does eclipse 1,000 yards through the air this year. Now, the last point that I want to make in favor of Austin Ekeler also hitting 1,000 yards on the ground is our schedule this year. We do have somewhat of a soft schedule of defenses against the run. Here are the average rushing yards allowed per game last season from our opponents coming up this year. Cincinnati, 148.9. Kansas City, 128.2. Carolina, 143.5. Tampa Bay, 73.8. New Orleans 91.3, New York Jets 86.9, Miami 135.4, Jacksonville 139.3, Vegas 98.1, Denver 111, Buffalo 103, New England 95.5, and Atlanta 110.9. When I look at this, I think that the first 3 games are so crucial. This will help Ekeler establish himself as an every down back, gaining confidence in the team's ability to move the ball on the ground. And even with his toughest opponents, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, and New England, he may post below average rushing numbers, but I see a very real chance his receiving numbers remain consistent. Now, with all that said, the magic number in all of this is 62.5. This is the amount of yards he'll need to average per game, both rushing and receiving, in order to hit the 1K mark. Do you believe that Austin Ekeler is capable of 62.5 yards rushing and 62.5 yards receiving every single game in order to accomplish this? I am a firm believer in this. Based on his opportunity, surrounding cast, new scheme, soft schedule, I believe that Austin Ekeler will be the next 1,000 rushing and 1,000 yard receiving halfback in the NFL. Because I know you guys are going to be asking me what my stat projections are for Austin Ekeler, I'll give you a little sneak peek of another video I'm doing later on in the season for Austin Ekeler's stat projections. Obviously, the top is going to be rushing, the bottom is going to be the passing. I'm just going to kind of go through these really quick so you guys can kind of get a sneak peek of what I'm thinking. 91 yards on the ground, 51 yards through the air with a touchdown on the ground is what I'm thinking, versus Cincinnati, again a softer opponent, versus the Chiefs, 73 on the ground, 88 through the air with a score, which I think would be pretty realistic. The Chiefs definitely exposed versus Austin Ekeler, I've noticed in the past. Versus the Panthers, another soft opponent. These first 3 games so important to Austin Ekeler in establishing his game. 84 on the ground, 75 in the air with a score on the ground. Versus the Bucks, a really stiff opponent, versus the run. I'm only going to give him 42 yards, but I will say he does go off against their softer secondary. 10 receptions, 95 yards, and a score through the air. Versus the Saints, I'm thinking 43 yards on the ground, 49 through the air, no score. A very tough opponent, very tough defense to overcome that week. Versus the Jets, I'll say 39 yards on the ground, 42 through the air with a score. So very consistent through the air, I think, is the key here. 85 on the ground, 62 through the air. A touchdown each through the pass and on the ground. I think it's going to be a good day for Austin Ekeler again versus the Miami Dolphins. Versus the Jaguars, 81 yards on the ground, 108 yards through the air. He absolutely destroyed the Jaguars last time. Almost going to give a touchdown on the ground. Versus the Raiders, 45 yards on the ground, 88 yards through the air, and a score. This one's at home, though. I think it's going to be a little harder in Las Vegas. 66 yards on the ground, 78 through the air with a score versus Denver in Denver. Next up is the Bills. Again, a really tough defense on the ground, 57 yards on the ground, 51 through the air with a score versus the Bills. Next up, the Patriots, also a really tough defense. I'm going to give him 59 yards on the ground, 73 yards through the air with a score. The Falcons coming up next, 98 yards. I'm going to say this is a big game for us at home with a touchdown on the ground, 67 yards through the air. We're almost done here, guys. 3 more games, 55 yards through on the ground for Austin Ekeler versus the Raiders. This time at Vegas with a score. And then 5 receptions for 43 yards, no score. The Broncos' second matchup, 72 yards on the ground, 86 yards through the air with a score. And then finally the Kansas City Chiefs Week 17, 84 yards on the ground with a score with 46 yards through the air. That's going to give us a season total of, let's go ahead and take this thing off right here. Season total of 230 attempts, 1,077 yards, 7 touchdowns, 114 receptions, 1,112 yards, and 9 touchdowns, thus sealing the deal and giving him the nickname of the 1K Rockstar. Well, that's all we got for this video today, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. If you do enjoy these kinds of videos, hit us up with a like and sub. Your guys' support means so much to me, dudes. We're getting close to 16,000 subscribers, and I could not be more humble to that fact. Well, guys, again, we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us. Bolt up, and always remember, stay frosty.